as we saw previously, the issue now is that once we have created a restaurant, there is a problem with the redirection to the page showing the details for the newly created restaurant. So basically, what Django is complaining is that it doesn't know the URL to redirect to. So following with the tutorial, we are now dealing with this restaurant details step that is failing. And what we are going to do is to provide a method at the level of the restaurant model that is the method get absolute URL. This method is the responsible for providing this redirection. And this is a way to know for each entity corresponding to the restaurant model, which is its URL. So basically, what we're going to do is to copy this method and add it to the models in the My Restaurant application and provide this method get absolute URL. Basically, what we are doing here, as we have mentioned before, we should avoid fixing URLs or patterns of URLs in our code. So every time we can, we should use views and the names of the views instead of the URLs. So this way, URLs are just fixed in the URLs file and not across our code. So this is the same that we are going to do in this case. We are going to use the restaurant detail view as the way to get the URL corresponding to this restaurant. And as we will see, this view will be specific for every restaurant. Each one will have its own URL. So we also need to provide mechanisms to customize this view for every restaurant. And we're going to use is the primary key for the restaurant. So we will see later that this URL corresponding to this view will be formed by a basic pattern plus the primary key, and this will conform the URL. So in order to move from the view to the URL, that is what is going to be returned by this method, we should use the reverse method from Django URLs base. So we import it and we applied it to the view plus the primary key of the restaurant, the current restaurant. This way, we are generating that specific URL. Now, what we will need is that in the URLs file, we provide this view, okay? And as this is also like before an generic view, we don't need to customize. We can just create it directly here. So we will add this path, that is the way we will build the URL corresponding to a restaurant. It will be based on restaurants plus the primary key. We are going to use the detail view here directly from Django. That's why we are not creating a view in the views file. This will use the model restaurant, and this is the template that we are going to use to show the details for our restaurant. And finally, the name of the view that corresponds exactly to the one that we are using here. So what this method is doing is going to these URLs and reversing the view, and the primary key will build the corresponding path for the URL. That will be then concatenated, going up all URLs to the project level URLs, concatenating before my restaurants, and then depending on where it's deployed, the application and the full URL will be built. So now what we are missing is basically this restaurant detail HTML template. That is the one that we are going to use to display restaurants details, and we will create it in the templates folder for our project with the corresponding name. And inside, this is also extending the base HTML template, and we replace the content, just the content section, so the rest of the template, the base template, will be reused directly. Will be just the restaurant name, what we are going to display. Here it's complaining about not finding because we are missing my restaurants as before. Okay, now it's correct. And with this, we have also prepared the view that is going to show the restaurant details. So if we execute now again the behave in order to check if the scenario is passing, we'll check. And as we can see, now all steps are green, so they are passing. So we have finished implementing our first scenario. At the register restaurant, where just the name is provided, we are being redirected to the corresponding page showing the details for the restaurant, and there is just one restaurant now into the database. We can also, just to finish, check if actually this is happening. Okay, so we will start now the My Recommendations application, well, the project. So we start, we can run it also from PyCharm. Now it's being launched and listening and port 8000. If we go there, we will see that at that URL we get a page not found, okay, because there is no view listening to this particular route, and Django is exploring starting from my recommendations URLs, the ones for the whole project, and is exploring options. So it's telling us that we can go to admin, we can go to my restaurants, that will bring to the URLs for the my restaurants application, and also that we can go to account login and logout. These are the views that we have configured so far. So for instance, we can go to login just to check that we can log in our application. So if we use that route, we go to the login form that we have configured, and now I can log in using the admin super user that we created at the beginning. Okay, now it's completing again because by default, when we log in, we go to the profile for that user. Okay, and we haven't yet created that particular view. And in fact, what we are going to do, we configured, for instance, in the login page, is that it went to the next, and the next will be to go back to my restaurants. So we don't need to create this profile for the moment. So now we can try, we are logged in, so we can go to the my restaurants route. Yes, using my restaurants. Here it's complaining again because is nothing there. What we can do is to go to the restaurant create view that we have created. And here we can see the form to create a restaurant just using its name in the tavern. And now you can see that we have been redirected to the page that is showing the details for a particular restaurant. And this is at the URL that corresponds to a particular restaurant. So we have now all the functionality available for all the steps so far. And that's for the scenario that is to create a tavern, a restaurant using just its name, like the tavern. And we can also log out like before, and now it's working properly. The next is to stay in the same page. We can now click again login, admin and password. We can see now that password. We are redirected to the previous page where we started from. That was the details for a restaurant. And that's all for this first scenario for the feature register restaurant.